Hi, my name is Deb Weiss-Gelmi, and today's sequence is a restorative sequence, which means we're going to get into poses to allow our body to restore and rest. So for props, you'll need 3 to 5 blankets or towels. If you're using towels, you might need more. Beach towels can be helpful as well as bath towels. And if you have some blocks, just have those handy in case we need those. Our first pose is Adho Mukha Virasana. So first watch and you'll see what props you might need while you're in it. So I sit with the big toe mounds together and my knees a bit apart and sit back on my feet. If you're not able to sit back on your feet, you might put a blanket or two between your calves and your buttocks, maybe a block, something to support you so you can have a connection in that space. And so then from here, I take my top thighs and they roll out to the side as I lengthen my ribs forward and the arms forward and rest my head. And so here's, if you need support for your head, you could use a block or a blanket here. Okay, so this is the pose and what it looks like, and then I'll talk you through it once we're doing it together. So start out with the edges of your big toes together, and the knees are just wide enough to allow the ribs to go through. Okay, so the top thighs spreading to the side. You can put in your blankets and such if you need that under you. The thighs going toward the side and lengthening the ribs forward out toward the hands, and rest your head. Now again, if you need the support for your head, you can put a block or something under your head. So move from your top buttock to your middle buttock toward the floor, having a roundness in your low back. And then from there, you lengthen the torso from your hip bones all the way to your hands, creating length in the torso. Now lift the elbows up off the floor. The arms are straight in this particular version of the pose. Elbows off the floor, even forearms off the floor. So lifting the elbows up and taking the deltoid, the outer elbow, toward the floor. And then draw your outer arms toward each other and spread the upper back. Relax the face, relax your jaw. So top buttock to middle buttock to floor. And lengthening that rib cage away from the pelvis. Press through the pointer finger mound on the hands. And from that pointer finger mound, lengthen up through that inner shoulder. Lift the elbows up, outer shoulders down. Draw the outer arms toward each other and spread the upper back. Soften the face. And then from this pose, we're going to go right into Adho Mukha Svanasana, which is downward facing dog pose. So before we move, though, press the pointer finger mounds down. So we're moving from the little finger side of the hand to the thumb mound side, that pointer finger mound. And then lift up to all fours. Curl the toes under, and then lift the hips up. So now that lengthening that we were doing from the wrists from the pointer finger mound to the inner shoulder is now done even with more lift. Pressing the thighs away from the hands. So similar actions, the outer arms coming toward each other and spreading the upper back. The inner arms going toward the wall in front of your body. So this way. Triceps coming toward each other is another way to think of that. And in this pose, we're doing a restorative sequence, so this pose could certainly have your head resting on something. It's got to be low enough, though, where you're not shortening your neck to get to it. It's got to be low enough. So resting that head can provide more restoration or rest. So remember the pointer finger mound pressing down, lifting, lengthening through that inner shoulder. The outer shoulder rolling toward the ankle almost, toward the floor, but toward the ankle. Resting that head. Allow the inner heels to lengthen toward the floor. You can come in and out as you need. And then we'll come on down and we'll go back into Adho Mukha Virasana, that first pose that we were doing. So we move our feet, the inner edges of the big toes, walk ourselves back, take the support that you need, maybe changing the support to experiment, and then again lengthening the ribs forward, lengthening that front body, taking the sternum forward. So the top thighs spreading a bit or moving from the inside out can work to create more space in the pelvis and in the abdomen, spreading wide. Move from the top buttock to the middle buttock toward the floor, and then from there lengthening the torso away. Press through the pointer finger mound, lift the forearms up off the floor, lift the elbows, outer shoulder toward the floor. Draw your outer arms toward each other and spread the upper back. And then we'll come on up to all fours and sit up. So this is the part of the sequence where if you practice Shirsasana, you'll stop the video, do headstand, and then come back and join us here. Our next pose is Upavishta Konasana. It's a seated wide leg pose. So let's grab some of your blankets and have them nearby for this pose and the next couple of poses. So especially if you have tight hamstrings, the back part of your leg here, you might want to be up on some height. Okay, so you'll take your legs wide. And one way to know if you need height is if your pelvis is rolling back like this. If it's rolling back, you want to have height because you want to try to have the pelvis upright. So then the pelvis upright and the ribs and lifting that front armpit chest up. And then taking the shoulders down. Okay, so you want to extend through the inner knee, the inner thigh, the inner knee, and the inner heel and big toe mound away. And then the little toe side comes back toward your outer hips. And then put your hands behind you and point your fingers forward, sort of like you've got like a tennis ball under your hands, and point those elbows back. Spread across the chest, the collarbones wide. Soften the face. And check out your feet. Notice if they're flopping back or forward, and try to have that middle toe up toward the ceiling. And then the kneecap toward the ceiling. lifting the front body and taking the shoulders down. And just notice as you sit here any of your regular habits that come in. You know, notice if you're dropping forward, so you want to lift up the sternum. Notice if your legs are, if your feet are going away from that mid upright position. So just work to flow the inner thigh through to the inner heel, big toe mound, and the little toe side coming back toward the outer hip, toward the outer hip. Upavishta Konasana. And then the next pose is Baddha Konasana, bound angle. And so for this one, even if you're not sitting on height, I recommend having some height for this pose, and then you can take some of the height out as you go. So first, we'll get some of the height up there. And then to bring a leg in, grab the strings of your knees. That part when you feel the back of your knee, the part that gets hard there. So you want to try to hold on to that and try to let it soften. So we're working to soften the inner thigh and that inner knee there. So bringing that in. Once you get it in a little bit, then you can lift yourself up onto the blankets. If you're going up onto height, then go back to the strings of the knee, bring that foot right in toward your body. And then strings of the knee of the other leg. Bringing that in, allowing that softening to happen. Softening, softening until you get that softening, and then bring those feet in. So you join your heels together, your big toe mounds together. And then if you find you have too much height, then you can remove some of that height. So taking that pelvis toward the feet, taking your feet toward your pelvis, and then lifting up. So lifting the front armpit, chest up, broadening across the collarbones, soften the face. Shoulders away from the ears. So again, those hands in the back, the fingers point toward the hips and the elbows point away. You can also flatten your hand for a straight arm if that works for you. So as you lift up with your hands, then sometimes you can soften the inner thigh, inner knee a bit more to go a little bit lower. Soften the face. Lengthen the crown of your head up. Baddha Konasana. So our work in this pose is softening the inner thigh. A lot of the challenges that we have in our knees and in our hips and in our back tend to come back to that tightening of the inner thigh that we do without even knowing it. So our work in this pose is to release the inner thigh and the inner knee. Baddha Konasana. You can also hold on to your shins or your feet. Whichever one that you hold on to, you want to be able to lift the front armpit chest high. Soften the face. I happen to be right next to a wall, which is really nice. You can also make it so your blankets are half the size, so you can be right into the wall. So you can either stay here, I'm going to just show you that version so you can do that when either now or the next time you watch the video. So you can have the blankets so they're half the depth, or even just a block. You just have a block and you can take yourself right into the wall, and then you can have your back on the wall for extra support. So softening those inner thighs, bringing the feet in, and then now my outer shoulder can roll toward the wall. I can just rest my hands on the thighs. Lifting the front armpit chest up. And then when we come out of this pose, use your arms to pull the knees up. Take your feet out in front of you to Dandasana. And whenever we re-straighten our legs after our knees are bent, do your best not to press down on the knees. Press down on the heels instead. And then the knees will eventually open back up. So press the heels down and the roots of the thighs down. Dandasana, staff pose. So our next pose is called Virasana, which is hero's pose. So this is one where you will likely need some props around, and it will differ for everybody depending upon how much support you need. So I will show you that pose, and then you can decide how much support you need. So the first thing I do is lay down a blanket, and this will be what my shins are on, and then I'll have some blankets around for support. So one nice way to fold these blankets is in a tri-fold, but depends on what blankets you have for how you will take care of them. We can also have a couple blocks around as well. So watch first and then we'll go into it together. So I have my feet hip distance apart with my toes facing straight back, and then I reach into the strings of the knee from the back and pull the calf muscle away and out to the side. And then I can sit down between my feet. So my heels are on each side of my hips. Now if I don't go down that far, then I could sit on a block or two or stack up blankets. Another great way to support this is blankets under here. And so Virasana could end up being quite a high pose for you to support you wherever you need. Okay, so once you're in the pose, then we'll talk about some of the actions that are in it. Okay, so we'll start out, have your props around you, especially if you don't know how much you'll need, and then we'll start out kneeling on the blankets. Okay, so my toes point straight back. I take my calf muscles out to the side and taking that outer calf down near that outer knee as well. So taking that down, sitting down between the feet or on top of a prop. And now we're going to do some arm work. So if you can handle this a little bit, but it's a little too much to be here for a while, you can sit on some support. And it's nice, even if you know this pose and you don't need support, it's nice to sit on some support when you first started each day, to allow for a lengthening before you go too deep. So once we're in the pose and you feel that you are in a place that you can stay for a bit, you can pull the fronts of your knees up, and it can release the skin of the shins a little bit. I'm also going to turn to the front so you can see a little more action, but you stay in the pose. So we also want to rotate the knees in this way. So the inner knee goes up and the outer knee goes down. So we can also do that with our thighs. So the inner thigh go up and the outer thigh go down. So that inner knee up, outer knee down. So inner thigh up, outer thigh down. And so what the thighs are doing affect what the knees are doing. Then we'll take the arms out in front of us for Urdhva and reach those arms up. And as you take the arms up, the triceps come toward each other, lifting up, lengthening that rib cage up and off the pelvis. Triceps toward each other, finding space on each side of the navel, drawing the abdomen back and spreading. Soften the face, lengthening up, and then bring the arms down, rest them on the thighs, lift the front body up. That side chest, the front armpit up. Soften the face. Clasp the hands together for Parvatasana in this Virasana pose. Lifting up, soften the face. Taking the top buttock toward the middle buttock, toward the floor. And lifting the rib cage up and off the pelvis. Soften the face. And then we'll switch the clasp of your hands so you can bring them down. The front thumb, the hand that has the thumb in the front, the thumb and those fingers will go behind the other hand. And then clasp again, take the palms away and up. Shoulders away from the ears. Top buttock toward the floor. Soften the inner thighs. Soften the face. And release the hands. Palms face each other and hands down. And then to come out of the pose, we'll go to our hands and knees. See if you can get the props out of the way. Cross the shins and sit back. And take the legs out in front of you for Dandasana. And again, don't force the knees down to the floor, but allow them to go down as you lengthen the heels away. Press the heels toward the floor. Press the roots of the thighs toward the floor. And just allow those knees to open up slowly. They need more time. So press the heels down into the floor and the roots of the thighs. Allowing those knees to just slowly open. Roll the outer shoulder back. Lift the front armpit chest up. So our next pose is called Supta Baddha Konasana. So Supta means reclined and Baddha Konasana is bound angle. The one with our feet together and our knees to the side. So with it being a reclined pose, we'll need some support behind you. So one way to do that is to take a blanket like this or 3 blankets like this, fold them so they are in the narrow orientation. So 3 blankets. Now, if you don't have these blankets, then you'll figure this out with towels and figure out a shape that works. So we've got this height with these 3 blankets. And if you have another blanket or a pillow, you can put that here for under your head. I happen to have a block, so I'm going to put this under this top one. But if you don't have that, then you could roll this way for a pillow. Okay, so I'll show you really quickly and then we'll go in together. I sit in front of the blankets, a couple inches between me and the blankets. I join the soles of my feet together and the knees wide. And then I bring the feet into my body. And then I lift up and take my pelvis away from the blankets toward the feet. And then lift the chest up and go down to the elbows and allow that support to support my ribs. I don't have my low back on the blankets, but I have my ribs on the blankets. And then I allow my palms to face up. So this is the basic shape of the pose. So we'll do this together. Do remember when you come out to use the muscles of your arms to bring your legs together to keep those inner thighs soft. And then we'll roll to the side to come out. Okay, so before you go into it, have a couple blocks or a couple blankets in case you need them once you're in the pose for supporting these outer legs, supporting the knees up. So if you need to get that, go ahead and get that. A pillow under your legs would be fine, or a blanket, or blocks. Okay, so when you're ready, sit in front of the blankets, a couple inches from the blankets, join the soles of your feet together. Pull the feet in as much as works for your body. Put your hands behind you, lift your pelvis toward, and take your pelvis toward your feet. Lift up the front body and go back to those elbows and back to the support of the blankets. So now your ribs are on the blankets. Your low back is not on the blankets. And then this is where if you do need something under your legs, you can do that to support and soften the inner thigh. Blankets work nicely there, or pillows, or a block. And so then try to make it so your trapezius muscles, the muscles that are right next to your neck, that those are going down, flowing down your back toward your buttocks. And then the bicep of your arm is rolling from the inside out, allowing the palms to face the ceiling. The outer shoulders gently roll toward the floor, allowing gravity to make that happen. Soften the muscles on the face. Now, if you feel any tension in your low back here, you can use the muscles of your hands to take your buttocks away from your low back. So you'll lift your pelvis up, use your hands to move the flesh of your buttocks away from your low back, and then you can rest back in the pose. Soften the inner thighs to the inner knees. Soften the abdomen, that entire abdominal space. Take your shoulders away from the ears. Unhinge your lower jaw from your upper jaw. Continually readjusting yourself as needed. If anything is hurting, of course, adjust so you don't have pain. There will be what we would consider sensations as long as it's not pain. If you do come out of this before I do, be sure to use the muscles of your arms to bring your legs together, keeping the inner thigh soft. Soften the muscles on your face. Unhinge your lower jaw from your upper jaw. Soften the muscles around your eyes and your cheeks. Soften the muscles in your throat and your neck. And again, if your props are not quite right, you can fix them. So to begin to come out of this pose, open your eyes. Use the muscles of your hands to bring the knees toward each other. And then roll to your side, allowing your head to just be supported by the floor or your hand. And then push yourself up into a seated position. So our next pose is called Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. And there are many different versions of this pose, but we are going to do the one today where we use the support of the blankets. So the blankets that we had set up for the last pose is what I'm going to use for this next pose. So I will show you the pose and then we'll get into it. But first, actually, let's set it up for yourself. So we'll need something that's high, that in the middle. So you'll need something that's shaped something like this. And then you'll need something for the feet that is like this. But this could be pillows and blankets here as well. So watch first. So I sit down on the blankets. And then I lift and I take my buttocks away from my low back. And I lie down on the blanket. And then I go off the edge of the blanket using the friction of the blanket to take my muscles by my neck away, the trapezius muscles, dragging the back away from my neck until I get to the tops of my shoulders. So that all the way to the tops of the shoulders. And I can even think of pushing my heels into the floor to get heavier on the tops of the shoulders. And then flow the shoulder to the hands. And this is the tricky part, is trying to get your feet up on those blocks, depending upon how they've been measured for you. And so getting those feet up with the heels on the blocks, or the blankets, depending upon what you have there. So now I'm on the tops of my shoulders, and heavy on them, and the back of my head is resting on the floor. So my chin is right near my chest. Okay, so we'll go in this together and we'll talk through it a bit. But when you do come out, you put your feet on the floor. And there are different ways. If you're on a slippery floor, then you could lift up and just slide your blankets out. Otherwise, you can roll to the side and again support your head, and then we'll sit up. Okay, so we'll do this together now. Okay, so these blankets provide a friction for taking the back body down toward the buttocks. So take advantage of that friction as you're sliding down. So first, sit on the blankets. Lean back on the hands. Lift and lengthen the low back away. Take your back down to the blankets, and as you go over the blankets, use the friction of the blankets to take your back body towards your buttocks. Get to the tops of the shoulders. Heavy on the tops of the shoulders. Flow the shoulders toward the hands, and then extend the legs out to the blocks or the blankets, whatever you have back there. Extend and flow through the inner heel, big toe mound. And then the outer thighs go up toward the ceiling very gently. Soften the abdomen. And if you lose contact, if your shoulders get light on the floor, then put your feet back on the floor for a moment. Press into the floor to push to the tops of the shoulders. And then you can take your legs back, feet back one at a time. So the back of my skull, the back of my head lengthens away from the shoulders. Soften the face, soften the jaw. Flowing the shoulders to the hands. Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. Building a bridge pose. And now notice where you're holding tension, because this pose has some muscular work and some relaxation. So the legs are working. The inner thighs toward the floor. Extend through the inner heel, big toe mound. The little toe mound comes back to the outer hips, drawing in. But then soften the abdomen. Soften the throat and the neck. Soften the face. Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. This is a great pose also before bedtime. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of different versions or variations of this pose. Keep remembering to soften the face. And just to be sure, make sure the back of your skull, the back of your head is on the floor, and your chin is near your chest. So you're not at all on the top of your head. Your shoulders are all the way to the floor, and the back of your head is resting easily on the floor. But then don't let your legs get floppy. Your legs are working. The inner thighs toward the floor. Extend through the inner thigh, the inner knee, the inner heel. Bring the little toe side back toward the outer hips. So to begin to come out, bend your legs, put a foot on the floor, one at a time, and then roll to your side, allowing your head to be supported by the floor. And then push yourself up into a seated position. This is the part of the sequence where if you are a level 2 student, you can pause and do Sarvangasana, shoulder stand, and then come back for Shavasana. Otherwise, we're moving into Shavasana. You can keep one of these blankets for a head support if you wish. Lie down on your back. And when you lie down, keep your feet on the floor for a moment, lift up, lengthen or take the flesh of the buttocks away from the low back, and then take your legs out one at a time. And then once they're lengthened, then you can allow them to splay to the side. Soften your whole abdominal space and your chest. Flow your shoulders gently toward the hands. And then allow everything to let go. From the top of your head all the way down to your feet. Soften the muscles on your face. The muscles from the in between your eyebrows flow to the temples and to the back of your head. Soften the muscles around your eyes, your cheeks, your jaw. Soften your throat, your neck. Soften from your shoulders all the way down to your half-open hands. Soften your chest and upper back. Soften your abdomen and your low back. Soften all of the muscles of your hips and low back and pelvis. Flow your inner thighs, your inner knees, through your inner calves and ankles, and allow the feet to just splay to the side. From the top of your head all the way down to your feet, let go. To begin to come out of Shavasana, bend your arms, put your hands onto your front body, wherever it's comfortable. Your abdomen, your ribs, your chest. Bend your left leg, put your foot on the floor. Draw your right arm up and over your head. Push off your left side, roll to your right side. Draw your knees together for comfort. Allow your head to rest on the arm. And then push yourself up into a seated position. Namaste.